Okay, so let's go on to these problems. All right, so I want to factor this. I want to see if I have a GCF, and the answer is no. There's nothing in here that I have in common with all of them. All right, so if I start following this, I don't have a GCF. I follow down here and I have 3 terms. Do you have 3 terms? Yes. Now we get to ask ourselves this question, because this is going to be just to decide whether or not we have a perfect square trinomial. The first thing you want to do is to ask yourselves, do you have perfect squares on the ends? If the answer is no, then you go back to what we were doing in the previous section where you're looking for what numbers multiply to blank and add to blank. But do we have perfect squares on the ends? Well, x squared is a perfect square. Its square root is x. 16 is a perfect square as well, so its square root is 4. Okay. Now, if you have perfect squares on the ends, it is worth a couple of seconds to check to see if it's a perfect square trinomial, because if it is, you can go directly to your answer. And if it's not, then you haven't really taken up a whole lot of time. Okay? So I have perfect squares on the ends. So what we're looking for here is, if you look at these patterns, we have perfect squares on the ends. We also have a plus sign at the last term. So what we ask ourselves is we have to check this middle term. If we multiply the square roots of those last 2 numbers, which, all right, the square root of this was a, the square root of this was b. If we multiply them together, that's our ab, and then double it, that's our 2. We need to see if we get the middle term. If we get anything else, it's not a perfect square trinomial, and we need to look at the other direction. If I take this x and multiply it with a 4, I get 4x. If I double that, I get 8x. Is that what I have right here? Yes. Okay. So since that worked out, and I have a minus sign right here, my answer are these 2 x minus 4 squared. This x comes here, the minus sign comes here, this comes here. So that's how that factors. Now, can you do it the other way? Yes. I'd be looking for 2 numbers that multiply to a positive 16, that add to a negative 8. The answers I would get would be negative 4 and negative 4, which means we would factor it as x minus 4 times x minus 4. And I would expect you to take this and remember to change it to here. Okay, so if you do this, you should actually recognize that you did it the hard way, and you can go directly to this. Okay, this actually becomes more important in later sections. Okay, so let's work this problem. Remember how I said if you have a number in front of your squared, you should be looking especially for greatest common factor or one of the special factoring techniques. So I have a 2 here. Do I have a GCF? Well, all of these values are divisible by 2. They're all even numbers. So my GCF is going to be a 2. Factor that out. And this gives me x squared plus 12x plus 36. So since I was able to factor out a 2, my answer is not going to be prime. I was able to do something. So double check we got the largest thing out of this, and we did. We have 3 terms. Do we have perfect squares on the ends? Well, the square root of x squared is x. The square root of 36 is 6. So I do have perfect squares on the ends. Now we just check to see if our middle term is correct. X times 6 would be 6x. If I double that, do I get 12x? The answer is yes. This is the same as this. So I have a perfect square trinomial. Don't forget the 2. And then this factors as x This is a plus, so this is a plus. 6 squared. And that will be my answer.